Well, welcome back, everybody. I want to tell y'all, I am so excited. I said I was so close last week to 1,000 subscribers. I had 992, 993, somewhere in there. And as of this morning, Friday, the 25th of April, I have 1,500 plus subscribers. You guys, y'all blew it out of the park for me. I so appreciate it. I'm just so thankful and grateful and appreciative and all those things. I just am so excited about everybody and how you participated. I had so many great comments, just a few. I had a lot of comments, but just wanted to put a few out there. Tote bags was done by a couple of people that they suggested we use them for. So tote bags, it will be. And then one lady suggested adding a nice heavy sashing. I mean, not sashing, back border. So heavy border it will be. And then the other one I just kind of chose myself. I'm going to show you how to make a pillow that's just a flip in, so you don't have to put zippers or leave your pillow in there all the time. You can take it and use the pillow covers, and you don't have to buy a new pillow form every time you want to make a pillow. Let me just run over a few other ones. Backing for quilts, that was a big one. One lady says she was using all her scraps in a similar manner, but she was making flying geese out of them for a pattern that she had found. Another lady suggested a color wash quilt. Linings of purses, great idea, great idea. Placemats, quilted jacket. Those are some great ideas, and I appreciate everybody participating in that because it means a lot to me that you commented, you gave me thumbs up, and you subscribed. So if there's anybody out there who hasn't subscribed yet and you're watching me on a weekly basis, would you please hit that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment below. Now, if any of y'all have any projects y'all want to share, go to my Facebook page, Be Yourself Quilting, and you can share your projects on that page. And so everybody can see your beautiful work. I can't do a Facebook Live until I get 40, it's not 40, I only have 40, 100 Facebook subscribers. So I'm trying to work it out where we can start maybe doing some lives, getting together a little bit more, talking about projects throughout the week. So just, if y'all help me participate, I'd appreciate it. So guys, I'm not going to talk a lot right here because it's kind of a long video because it has 3 parts. And I'll meet y'all back here at the end, and we'll talk a little bit more about all the different projects. All right, guys. Thank y'all for joining me this week. So this week, what we're going to do is we're going to take some of those panels that we worked on last week, and we're going to just turn them into a few things. Nothing too fancy, just simple projects. It might expand your mind and allow you to determine what you might want to do with your own. So first of all, the blue one. It was my largest piece. How big is it? 35 by, let's see here, 35 by 29. So this is what this one came out. I'm not going to, sorry, I dropped something on the ground. I'm not going to work on this blue one, okay? I'm going to put this up. I still have some blue fabric that matches some of this, and I'm going to hold off, and I think I'm going to add some to this and make it larger. So the blue one's just going to get set aside for now. I really think this would make an excellent backing for a little bit more sizable piece of quilt at this time. I don't know. So that one's going to go on the side. So project 1, we are going to work with the pink panel that I made. Now, it was an odd size. So I cut it to a 17-inch square. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a pillow cover with it, okay? This is a 16-inch pillow. I cut it 17 inches because that'll give me a little shrink room as I'm sewing onto it, and then I can retrim it to the proper size. I will use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so I will probably end up cutting mine about 16 and probably about 16 3/4 final, so I might not have to trim it at all, just because I would like it to have a little extra space there when you flip the pillow in. It don't put too much stress on the seams. Okay, so that's it. Okay, I'm gonna push this out the way for just a few minutes. So how I started this is, I decided I wanted to make like a daisy type of flower, just white. I just think it would be pretty. I think it'd be pretty in a little girl's room, maybe a dorm room. I don't know. A lot of people have pink in their houses. One of the houses I bought one time was all pink on the inside. So I just took a piece of paper. This was just a piece of scrap I had. It's 2.5 by 6.5. And I just folded it in half. And I just took a pencil, and this is about a 1/4 inch here. I started, and I just made a gentle curve. Now, at first, I made it pointy, and when I cut it out, I'll just show y'all. It's not pretty pointy. Well, not for this particular flower. I'm just going to make something simple. It's not even a real flower. My thought was daisy, cone flower type of look, but just simple. I open it up. It's pretty pointy, so I didn't think I really wanted that look. I wanted something a little smoother, so all I did was just took that corner off. And then when I opened it up, it's more like this one. It's not exactly the same, but it's good enough. Then I took a piece of, this is just like, I've used this plenty of times, the little cardboards they use inside of comic books. That's what this is. It's got a little thickness to it, not bad. And I have a ton of this because I thought I was going to wrap my fabric on it, but I have too much fabric. It won't fit on my shelves if I wrap it. And I'm just going to use a glue stick because I use a lot of these in sewing. I have a ton of them. And I'm just going to put some glue down here, everywhere I think it might take. This paper I'm using is very thin. It's almost like newsprint. So if you put it on the back of it, sometimes it tears it. So I'll just put it on here like that and just rub it real good all the way out to the edges. Make sure there's no bubbles. And then once that dries, and it doesn't take it but a few seconds, as you see the purple's disappearing. So once that dries, I just cut it out with a pair of paper scissors right along the edge, and this is sort of what I got, okay? Once I got this piece, then I took some fusible web. Now, I really like the Heat and Bond Light, not the Heat and Bond Light is great. You can use it and you can immediately peel the back and use it. This is Pellon 805. It is also very good. It's very thin. It's lighter weight than the Heat and Bond, but the difference in this is once you heat this, it needs to sit a little while before you can peel it clean. It doesn't peel clean immediately. I'm not sure why, but that's just the way it's always been to me. So on the paper side, I just trace a petal, okay? And you can tell the difference because this side is rough and this side is smooth. And that's your paper side, okay? And just draw that, and then I'll take this and I will get my iron, just set this down here, and get a little piece of fabric that I want to use. You want to make sure you iron it to the wrong side of the fabric. On this one, it's hard to tell, but you can see here, you can read the word cotton, so I know that's the right side. So I'm gonna flip it over, and I'm just gonna put this on there, making sure it does not touch any of my ironing board surface. I'm gonna take my iron, and I don't know if it's heated enough yet, and I'm gonna count to 10. And then it's adhered, and it's hot. Put this back over here out of the way. And then we can just cut this out. I use my paper scissors for this. They're not so paper that they won't cut fabric. But you use whatever scissors you would normally use for this. Now I have another piece. Okay, so let's move this over here. So as I said, I needed to trim a piece off. I have this scrap. I'm going to put this in my scrap bag, and next time I go to use my scraps, I'll add on to this piece first and build from there. So I'm going to put this on the side. So here we go. So I just wanted to make a pretty little flower. So in order to do that, I'm just going to make a rough fold. I'm not worried about it being perfect. I just kind of want to get a rough estimate of where my center is. So my center is pretty much right here in the middle of this little pink polka dot. Right there. So I'm going to take a heat erasable marker, friction pin, and just make me a dot there. And that way I'll have it. So I think a pretty big button, I wish I had one bigger than that, I don't, but I think a button in the middle would be pretty. But you could just use a piece of round fabric if you want. And I'm just going to take these petals and just kind of play with them around that center. And I wish I would have marked the one I just did, because it's not going to peel as easy. Okay, so something like this, okay? All to that middle. I'm going to fuse this down, and I'm just going to do some raw edge applique along the edges, and then I will sew this button in the middle. And that is as simple as that's going to be. So first of all, I'm going to pick this up and get this out the way, and we're going to talk about the next step. So we'll have all these things determined. So to do the back, I like my backs. Oh, see, I have pretty pink here, but see, there's nice sizes, so I didn't throw that in my scrap. Probably should have. Okay, so when I make the back of my pillow form, I like to make a flip fold back, so therefore I'll need to cut two pieces 16 3/4 inches wide by 24 inches long, and I will fold them in half, and they will flip fold on the back side, and I'll show you that when we get to the sewing machine. So I have two pieces, okay? This is the folded edge. This is the raw edge. They're gonna go like this. And this will be sewed right sides together once it's completed. And then once I do that, we'll flip it inside out, and it'll be completely completed on the back, and you'll just flip your pillow in there, okay? This one won't matter. This pillow won't have a up or down or right or wrong. But if your pillow is facing in a particular direction, you want to put your top piece on and then your back piece. I'll show you that when we go to sew it together. Okay, so that's cut. We'll put that on the side for later. So our next thing is to actually lay this out and iron these on. Now I know that the pink is going to bleed through this white fabric. And I could have used SF 101 on the back of it. And I could have done it where we didn't have a raw edge applique, but to be honest, I wanted the raw edge applique. So if you score it, you just saw me do that. If you score your fabric with a pin, I'm going to just kind of put it all the way to that. Let's do that again where y'all can see it. So if you take and you score it, I didn't do that one well, with a pin, it just peels right off. And we're just going to do that real quick to all these pieces. I'm not laying them in any particular order, just getting them laid out in some kind of arrangement. And look, you can put as many leaves as you want on yours. You could do 12 leaves or whatever and have them overlap a bit. This is the one that I must have just ironed. You see how easy all the other ones did? But this one, it's very hard to peel that. So I'm going to lay that one on the side. If I need it, then I'll work with it. But in the meantime, but these have sat a few hours. And see how they just peel right off. It's something with that Pellon 805. I don't seem to have that happen when I use the Heat and Bond light. It just peels right away. It's not a... So if you're impatient, like I usually am, that's a good choice. But I had so much of this left that I just didn't want to waste it. And you do have to actually score it. A non-bent pin would probably be easier to hold. There we go. Okay. So this is 7 leaves, and I kind of like odd numbers when it comes to stuff like this. Now, as I said, I kind of want to use a button in the middle, but I'm going to be honest, if that button won't cover it, I'll just cut me a little round circle. Oh, you know what would be pretty? A yo-yo. Wouldn't a yo-yo be pretty in there? Maybe we'll do a yo-yo. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead, play with this a little bit. I don't want it to necessarily have a top or bottom, like I said. I think this one to turn just a little bit. Okay, I'm happy with that arrangement. So what I'm going to do is get my iron, and I am going to hold it for 10 seconds everywhere across here. I'm going to press. I'm starting in the middle, and I'm going to work my way out. I may have to press it a little longer than 10 seconds because this quilt top is a little bulky. But I'm not ironing, I'm pressing. And it's on there well enough. And I know it's shadowed, but you know, some flowers have very thin petals and you can see shadows through them, so that doesn't bother me. Now we'll have the little button there. Like I said, maybe I could make a yo-yo and then put the button in the middle of the yo-yo. That might be really pretty. Maybe a yellow yo-yo and then the little black button in the middle. Make it kind of like a little coneflower. I don't know. I just like that button. The next step on this is I am going to get a piece of batting. Now, if you had fusible fleece, fusible, it would probably be perfect for this. I don't, but I have this piece here, and I'm gonna tell y'all what, I think it's gonna work just fine. Look at there. That was nice, and I did not pre-cut that. That was just in my scrap box. So there we go. So what I'm gonna do is I have this stuff. Now you can pin it, not a problem, but I do have this stuff here. So I think we'll just start in the, I think we should start from one side. I don't know why I did that. Okay, one side. Where are we at? There we go. That's the edge. And that gets us past the middle. I'm going to pull this back. I bought this stuff here. It's a Quilter Select Free Fuse. Oh, it was a little shook up. And you just sprinkle it on like salt and pepper. It's not a permanent bond, but it's a good bond till you can get your little bit of quilting and stuff done. So I'm going to put that piece here back over like that. So I know I'm about halfway. And what does the instruction say? Because it's been a while since I used it. It says needle friendly, fusible powder. Well, it doesn't say, medium temperature for at least 4 seconds. That's what I was looking for. So let's start here. Okay, let me just cool that off a second. Okay, so here we go. It's all stuck good enough. I mean, these edges might not be stuck as well, but I didn't know how close. I didn't want this everywhere, all over everything, since it was on my mat here. So here at the sewing machine, I have put on a darning foot or a free motion quilting foot or whatever you want to call it. I do use my feed dogs up. I don't drop them. I don't worry about adjusting my stitch length because I'm just kind of thread painting. I am going to use just a white cotton thread. I'm not looking for any kind of special situation going on. I'm just going to start here in the middle, and it's just going to be a light thread painting. Now look, you don't have to do it this way. You can do a buttonhole stitch around all the edges, or a zigzag stitch, or you could do a straight stitch. It's whatever you want to do. Just kind of start in the middle. I don't really care which petal I start with. Is my hand going to be in your way? Hopefully not. And I'm just going to begin moving back and forth along this edge. I'm not really concerned about any specific pattern or look because I like the raw edge look. A lot of people don't. So if you don't, you be more specific in your work. You can, like I said, you can use a buttonhole stitch or a satin stitch or just one single straight stitch. This is just my style. You know, we all kind of need to be ourselves in life, so. I'm back to the middle. I'm going to cut this string out, this thread out of here, so it's not bothering me. I'm just going to go ahead and go around every petal like that. Then I will probably put a couple little stitches up the middle. I don't make all my stitch length the same length because I like the randomness of different stitch lengths. I just like that feel. It's a little more rustic. This is a good one just to practice. You see, I'm just keeping my hands out away from where my needle is, and they're not tight. They're just like this, okay? Now you can use gloves. So what I was talking about is coming up here. I'm just gonna come down here and I'm just gonna choose a line, kind of like a petal, the curve of the petal. It doesn't have to go back exactly on the line. If you're not comfortable just doing it random like that, that would go as far on that middle one. Then draw your line with a heat erasable marker or something. You can't really see that, but I know it's there and it adds extra stitches in the quilting part. And the batting behind there helps stabilize it, so you don't have to worry about the thread pulling too tight and wrinkling up your fabric. if you did not have batting behind it, I would stabilize it with something. Some kind of stabilizer like they use for embroidery, or several sheets of paper maybe, and then you'd have to pull them off the back. Something to keep it from pulling. Because when you do this kind of work, it does have a tendency to pull tighter. I do have the same color in my bobbin as I have on my top thread. Just in case doing this, I might get a weird stitch in my bobbin thread might pop up. That way you can't see it. Especially using all this white. All the edges are done the way that I like to do them. There's a few that are, you know, a little off, but, you know, like, it's thread painting, so that doesn't really matter. The center's down real good now. I was considering putting some, like, sunray type lines with pink, but, you know, I really think this holds it down enough, because we're going to trim it down and just go ahead and put the edges on. So, we talked about maybe just the button. And I think that that's fine. We could do a yo-yo. I don't have one made, but let's just, it would have to be out of a yellow for sure. So let's just kind of fold this up here and just test it. I really think I just want the button. So we're just going to sew that on just like we'd sew on any button, but we will sew it on now. Get this trimmed to size, and then I'll show you. So here we have our panel, and I sewed the button on in the center. I think it's just fine with a single button. Okay guys, sorry, but this is going to be a voiceover, so it's not going to match exactly because my microphone batteries died and I didn't realize it. What you see me doing here is I'm taking the two panels that we had cut previously, and I am going to make sure that your panel's folded in half, so I have about 12 inches on each side. The folded edge will be toward your middle, and all raw edges will be to the outside. You're going to line it up good so that all the edges match, and then you're going to take your second panel and you're going to lay it on top, and you are also going to verify that your folded edge is toward the middle and your raw edges are all to the outside. Once you get that done, you will be able to pin it, or you can just sew it without pinning it. I did not pin. I wish I had, because it did slip on me a bit as I was sewing it around. There is no need to leave an edge open for turning, because you will be turning from the middle, and when you flip this inside out, you will have a completed project with all edges finished. So it's a great choice whenever making a pillow cover where you don't have to insert a zipper, or you don't have to finish an edge once the pillow form is inserted. So just join me here. We'll sew around real quick, and I'll show you. So we're going to just nip these corners just to take out the bulk. They're not going to be perfectly square corners probably with all that batting in the same place, but it helps. And I don't want to be too close, because I don't want to you know, put undue stress on those corners. And if you've never done a pillow form like this, if you always do it with a zipper or something like that, that's awesome. I am not good at putting zippers in. I put zippers in 2 things in my life, and neither one of them is great. I need to try to figure out how to do that. This is fast and easy. So all we're gonna do is reach in here. We're gonna grab it and we're gonna turn it. Okay. Oh, that's the second time I did that. And grab this end and turn this in. Also, if you use a double layer of fabric, it gives you a little more thickness on your pillow, so that for wear and tear purposes. Now, if you want to, you can go along there and you can iron all that. Just grab something just to kind of push that corner out a little bit. They're not going to be perfectly square, just not going to be. And let me grab the pillow form and we'll stick it in there. Okay guys, so there you go. And see how it fits nice back here? So you don't have to worry about your pillow popping out. So this is how you just make a nice and simple pillow form. So guys, thank you for joining me on this project number 1. Project number 2 is coming up. So this was the little teal one that I really liked. And all I'm gonna do to this one is add some borders. One of the suggestion was to add a nice heavy border and make it into a baby quilt. And I'm gonna take that suggestion. So I looked and looked, I couldn't decide. I have this one and I really think it needs something dark. I know probably when she said heavy, she might have meant wide and maybe she meant dark, I don't know. But I like that. Then we have this. I think this is just entirely too light, but this might make a pretty binding. I don't know. We'll have to get the border on first. I also had this here. I know this is way too light, but again, that might make that's a better binding. So yeah, so let's do that. Now, it's just gonna be a simple border. I'm thinking 2.5 to 3 inches is 2.5. 2.5 would make it here. Let's do 3. So we're going to cut these 3.5 inch strips, and we're just going to sew the 2 sides and then the 2 bottoms. Yes, 2 sides and then 2 bottoms, and that's it. We're just going to do that, and then it'll be ready to be quilted and put up for a baby. I don't want to put any appliques or anything on this one. I kind of like it just the way it is. So so let's get this thing measured. 2 strips at 3.5 by 26, and then this way we are 22 inches. So 22 plus 7, because 3.5 plus 3.5 is 7, and so that's 29. So we need 2 at 3.5 by 29 and 2 at 3.5 by 26. I am not going to show quilting it, but I will show it quilted probably next week, just on a Facebook post. Now this is 108 inch fabric here, I do believe. So I think I'm going to get all but 1 strip out of this. It's going to be pretty thick to cut that, but I don't have a ruler longer than 26 inches, so I mean 24.5 inches. So I'm just going to line this up and give it a good trim here. Cut the edges off. Just kind of, if you got a real heavy thickness like that, always check it before you move your ruler. I'm gonna leave that sit there just a second. So we need 2 29. And I'm going to run that off the edge there so I can actually just use the numbers on my ruler. Just line it all the way up here. I don't know if y'all can hear the guineas out there. They cutting up pretty good. I can't believe Miss Cupcake ain't fussing about it. I'm sorry, you're not going to see this first cut, I don't believe, but I'm just straightening it up on the 0 on this end. Okay, so 29, right? That's what I said. Okay. I'm going to cut it at 29.5. That gives me some fudge room if I need it. Okay. Oops. Just not quite perfect there. In my way. Ruler was in my way. Alright, so these will be the 2 horizontals. We're going to do the 2 longer sides, their borders first. So, let me find the correct border pieces. That should be the right ones. Okay, let me put these on the side. So, all we're going to do is just sew a 1/4 inch seam. And we'll trim any excess, and then we'll sew the top and bottom. I'll press all seams outward. Okay, let me run over here to the cut mat. I'll trim these edges. All I'm going to do that is just flip it over this way and use the edge of the quilt to straighten that out. Press it open, and then I'll sew the other 2 sides. Okay, so I pressed to the outside, and now we're ready for the other 2 pieces. This made a really fast, simple little quilt. I'm just going to double check. Make sure it's long enough. Yes, it is. Okay, guys, I'm going to go trim it and press it, and we'll have. Okay, there it is all put together. It ended up being 28.5 by 32.5. So it might be just a smidge small for a baby quilt. If I feel like I'm going to use it for a baby quilt and I need it to be a little bit bigger, then I'll just add another border. I really like it though. I like the dark on the outside and the dark stripes running here and there on the inside. It looks great. So guys, just simple way to use it. I think it turned out fine, and it was fast and easy. You used up your scraps. All right, guys, so on to another project. I'll see y'all in a bit. Okay, guys, so now we're ready for project number 3. Sorry, I look a little wore out. It's late in the day, but I wanted to get this done. So this is what we're going to be working on, or a version of this, I should say. It's a little bit different. It's a tote bag. It's the kind you're just going to wear on your forearm like this, okay? Everybody can probably just do a basic tote bag. That's not a big deal. But my thought behind this is so many people knit and crochet in addition to their quilting or whatever. And so this is a different kind of bag. You can use it for whatever you want to. My mama said she thought it would be great to take to a farmer's market or something to put her vegetables and all in. And if you was going to do something like that, you could line it with more of like a plastic lining or one of those outdoor fabric linings. I designed it with this wider handle. It's a little wider than the ones I saw online. They're not really expensive online, but I thought it was just fun to use our scraps for this. So this is where we're going to start. I did it with a little bit wider handle here because I wanted it to be easy to turn. I didn't want anybody struggling to turn it. I know a lot of people have arthritis and things like that, and their hands just can't do some of the little intricate things. And to be honest, I don't like to struggle with turning things at all. So this is a version of it. Now let's get to how we're gonna make this. You're gonna be able to draw your own pattern. Okay guys, so this is how I drew it. This is the pattern and this is how I drew it, okay? I have 18 inches this way and 16 inches this way. So let's get our 16 inches. Okay, let me get a ruler. And I have, let me see here, that should be 10, 5, 6. So this should be 16 inches here. And I have an old rotary cutter that is just designated for paper. After I did that, I took my ruler and I drew I'm gonna use this corner because this corner is 1.5 inch. So I lined this up at 1.5 inches. Now if you want a larger gusset, you could make it larger, but this is what I did, so this is what we're doing. I drew it on this corner and I drew it on this corner, and this will be our bottom. Okay. And I'm going to draw a line straight across from there because I'm going to need it, I think. Maybe I won't, but let's just draw it. I'd rather have it than not have it. Okay. Now once I've done that, I need the bottom of the bag, so let's mark this, 1.5 inch square. 1.5 inch square, okay? Now to draw the height of the bag, we are going up from the bottom up 9.5 inches. I'm gonna put this on a line. This ruler is 8.5 inches, so I'm just gonna lay my ruler on the 1 inch line like that, and that should give me my 9.5 inches. Okay. Now this way we're at 16 inches, so I'm just going to take and draw myself a line at 8 inches all the way from the top to the bottom, and that gives me my center. Okay. So this whole line, this whole piece is 18 inches tall. This section here is 9.5 inches, and this section up here is 8.5 inches. Okay. Now I'm going to put a pocket on this one. The other one did not have a pocket. We're going to put a pocket on this one so that it can, sorry, I never have my ruler in the right direction, so that it can hold your knitting needles or whatever, your scissors, something like that, crochet hooks. So I'm going to mark a line 6.25 inches up, and that's going to be the top of my pocket. So this section from here to here is 6.25 inches, and this is our pocket. Okay, to do our handle, we're going to mark 3 inches on either side of the center line. Sorry if I get my head in the way, I don't mean to. So from this line up, I'm going to turn it around. So I'll get my 3-inch line. And I'm just lining up the line on my ruler with the line that I've previously drawn. Okay? And that's going to be my handle. Now, how I got my curve in my handle was like this. I took a plate. This plate, just my dinner plate, is well, it's right at 11 inches. Like 10 7/8, a little more than that, but 10 7/8 inch plate, okay? And I took it and I placed it on the edge here on this line, okay? And then I just rolled it in to that edge. And wherever it hit, so a little bit of this will be over. And there we go. That's my line. I didn't do it on both sides. I just folded my paper in half. Very well, okay, like that. And then I got me a pair of paper scissors. All my pink handle scissors are paper scissors, okay? So don't have a fit when you see me cutting with pink. Pink for paper, that's how I remember. And this is no longer needed. And there is my pattern, okay? So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to notch out these 1.5 inch corners because we want our gusset. If you don't want a gusset, don't notch out the corners and you can have a square bottom. Or if you want a rounded bottom, instead of notching out the gusset, just take your plate and put it down here, or a smaller plate, maybe a saucer instead of a plate, and just draw you a curve and cut it the same way. I'm going to do a gusset though because I want a bottom. Now this is my pattern piece. This is all I need. So what we're going to use is the purple fabric that we made. In order to do this, I'm going to switch to this one just because I have all the other information written on this for you. So you're going to need 2 fronts, 2 linings like this. You're going to need enough SF 101 to iron to the back of your front and back pieces. Okay, and then you're going to need a piece that's 6 1/4, or you're going to need 2 pieces, 6 1/4 by 16 inches, or you can do, if you fold it in half, then you can just do 6 by 16 inches. Okay, so that's up to you, but you do need it lined. You don't want it just hanging there. So we're just going to put this on here like this. And I am going to pin this in place, but I'm going to think about how I'm going to do this. I'm going to peek over on this side because it is kind of scrappy, right? And I would like the scrappy parts to show more than these big tall pieces. So I'm going to flip my fabric around because I got more scrappiness on this end. I'm going to make sure it's good and flat. I ironed it, so hopefully it stays good and flat. I got more scrappiness down here than I had up there. And I'm going to, if you look right here, I have a seam. So I'd rather be a little closer to this edge than on that seam. And this here would end up being at a seam, so I'm going to move that up a little bit. Okay. And I think other than that, I'm happy with it. So I'm going to go ahead and pin this in place. Again, right sides together. Now, there are several ways you can do this. Guys, you can cut it with your rotary cutter if you feel comfortable that way. Sorry. Or you can cut it with your scissors, or you can draw it out and then cut it with your scissors. It's whatever you're comfortable with cutting, okay? I tried it with the scissors. It was fine. I tried it with the rotary cutter. That was a little sketch to me. If you slip, you've kind of ruined your piece of fabric. And being that this is a scrap piece of fabric we made, I don't know if we can recover from that if we've used all of our fabric. And in this case, we definitely used all our fabric. So, I can't get that one. Sorry, I turn it around so I can reach it. Cut like this. And it might be a little harder to cut. I can throw that back in my scraps, simply because we do have a lot of seams in here because of the piecing it together. Now I'm going to do that with this one. Put this in a different place. And then I'm going to do it with this one. I'm going to make two pieces the same exact way. This is going to be my lining. I'm also going to put it right sides together. I know it's a little busy, but that's what I'm going to do. Then I need to choose a piece for my pocket. And to be honest, I think we're going to go with this, but I'm going to wait till I cut it out and have a look at it. Something a little calmer on the outside, okay? So this is my pocket, and all I did was cut a piece. I decided to make mine the same on front and back, same fabric. So I cut a piece 6 inches by 16 inches, okay? I notched out for the gusset, okay? And then I put a piece of batting in there. So I just folded it in half, slid a piece of batting in, and notched the batting out for the gusset also. Okay, so this piece is ready to go to the sewing machine. This is going to be my top. I had chose that other piece, but when I got to looking at it, it was not bright enough. I know that probably don't sound right, but it just wasn't. So this is the piece I went with, and I really think this piece is going to be matched enough. It blends, but it doesn't stand out to a point where you just want to scream. Okay, so that's that. Here's the backing. I mean, that's not the backing, the lining. I got it pinned at the top because that's going to be our very first seam. We're going to come in here and we're going to make some pockets, just random. I'm not really real concerned. I'll probably make a few skinny ones for our knit needles, and then maybe a couple a little wider for maybe a pair of scissors or something like that. Nothing specific. So here's our front and back, our outside. And what this is this is SF 101, okay? And the glue side is up, and it's only one side, it's sticky. So I ironed it where it would stick to the back. And I'm just going to have to recut it around the edges. Okay, so I've put purple thread in my top and my bobbin. First thing we're going to do is sew the lining right sides together across this top. Okay, I'm going to now press these seams at the top. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'm going to put these right sides together. Doesn't matter which one's on top, just so they're right sides together. And I am going to match them at that seam that we just sewed right here. And I am going to pin it. And I'm going to use quite a number of pins here because I want it to hold well. Let me see if I can get that on camera for y'all. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pin on both sides of that center seam on this side. Okay, I'm going to have to lay it down. I'm going to start in the center because I'd like for that to match. So we're going to sew starting on one corner, probably this one because that's the direction, all the way around to here. I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and ending, and then I'm going to do the same here. When I get to the center, I will make sure that it's still lined up before I continue on. So we're going to go ahead and sew those two seams. As it curves, we're just going to do a gentle curve. And we want it to be a gentle curve because all this is going to get pressed out. So we don't want any hard turns. Okay, so we have it like this, okay? Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna stick our hand through here. If your hand's too big, just kind of pull it down, okay? To the point where your hand can't fit through. My hand can, but I have little hands. Okay, and you're just gonna grab it, the whole thing, okay? And we're going to pull it through. There we go, just like that. Now, the best thing you can do right now before you go any further is go to the ironing board and work this seam nice and flat. Just kind of twist it, iron it, and get it all nice and flat. You can do this later, but if you do, it's much harder. So I'm going to pause here a moment. I'm going to go over to the big ironing board, work this seam out, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So see, I really pressed that seam good and flat. I didn't really want the back showing along the front. So when I do my top stitching after a while, it'll all be finished. And as you can see, it is very, very flatly pressed, okay? That's what you want. I'm going to set this aside just a moment. So I want to step in here while I'm showing you this step and talk to you a second. What I did here was the pocket needed to be attached to one side, whichever side you determined to be your front side. Upon doing this, I realized that I had made a mistake earlier, which I cut it out of the video, but I'm going to tell you what I did. I sewed all my little pocket lines on my piece of batting and pocket thinking that when I sewed it here, it would be attached. Well, it wasn't. So what I did was I sewed along the edges here and realized this mistake. And what I had to do was go back and re-sew all the lines that I had previously sewed in the pocket area to attach it to the actual tote. So what you're going to do is you're going to line them up and sew through the pocket layer and the side of the bag that you want it attached to. Just the outside of the bag, not the whole bag, okay? Once you get that done, you don't have to sew that bottom like you see me doing here. It was an unnecessary step and it created a little bit of bulk. If by chance when you get through sewing all your stitches down, making your pockets, then what you can do is just trim that edge straight again in case it squishes out the bottom. So guys, that was a total mess up that I had did, and I'm fixing to tell you what I did. So join me back and I will show you how I remedied my problem. Okay, so to keep it to this side, I'm just going to choose one line right here in the center, and I am going to re-sew that line, and that will keep this, when I turn it, hooked to that side. And I'm going to choose this one. Okay. You know, guys, I totally did that wrong. So every one of these pockets has got to be sewed now. I don't know what I was thinking, but they all need to be sewed on right now, not before. Before was just marking the lines, but now I actually need to attach them to this. So, well, this is my first time to do this, to be honest with y'all. So y'all learning as I learn. Well, guys, so every line that I sewed previously, I got to re-sew. But at least they're marked, right? So I have something to go by. Okay, guys, I fixed it. It wasn't as big a disaster as I thought it was going to be. So, lining together, right sides together. This is where we're going to leave our hole to turn, okay? So, I'm going to get that corner lined up there. And I'm going to get this corner lined up over here. Okay, sorry. So y'all can see it. So if y'all hear that engine revving up out there, my husband has been working on that engine for his little red express truck for many, many years. And today she runs right. What a glorious day for us. He's been working on rebuilding that for quite some time. So what I do is where I'm going to turn this out, I'm going to use two different pins. That's just the way I do it. I use a different pin so I know that I need to leave a gap there. Okay. Now we're going to take this side here, and we are going to match the center seam. Just like you were making a quilt, we're going to nest it. One going in one direction, one going in the other. It's kind of nested in there good. Put a pin out. And then I'm going to match this corner here. Now remember, we're going to have a little bulk here, okay? Because you've got the handle shoved in there and all that kind of stuff. So don't worry about that. Just make sure your edges are flat and straight as you pin. Okay, so we're going to start here. Sew here, we're going to back stitch, sew to here, back stitch. Start here, back stitch, sew all the way to here, back stitch, skip this. All back, sew, back stitch, all the way across, back stitch, skip, back stitch, all the way to here, back stitch, and here, and we're going to back stitch. And that's how we're going to do it, okay? That will be the next step. So I'm just going to get over here and I'm just going to sew for y'all. Now guys, leave as much room for turning as you feel you need, because the bottom is just the inside of the lining. It's not going to be a big deal. Okay, so that's that. Now our next step is to take these gussets and open them up like this. If I can open them up. Okay, there we go. And we are going to nest these seams together, one going one way and one going the other. I'm going to pin that in the middle. I'm going to pin this end. I know this is a lot of pinning. I don't normally pin this much, but I feel like it's very important that this all gets pinned. Okay. And it doesn't matter what order you sew them in. So I want to make sure that my pocket is all on the right side. So here's my lines showing where my pocket is. So I'm going to make sure that that's all in the same direction. That's a lot of bulk there, so that one might be a booger butt to sew, but we're gonna get it. That's why we pin. I think he's having fun out there with that truck. Okay, I just winked that pin, so let's get a longer pin. Kind of a lot of bulk right there, so this side, on this side, we will make sure it's all good and smooth in there, and then we'll use a longer pin on it too. Okay, so let's do that again. This is the side where the pocket's attached. So when we open this gusset up, we want to make sure that that pocket side, all the layers for the pocket is on this side, and just the layer for the back, I mean not the back, the non-pocket size is on this side. Now when I do this, I want to make sure that my seam is going in the same direction. I have it facing this way. So I want to make sure on this side that it's facing the same direction. I don't know, that one must have had a seam from the where we pieced together I've joined that pin there too, y'all. Gosh, dog it, I hate ruining my good pins, but I gotta have a pin. Guess I could use a clip. Okay, I'm just gonna make sure all that's good and straight in there. Right, guys, so all we're going to do now is sew with a 1/4 inch seam across all 4 of these gussets. Okay, guys, so we are all sewn on the outside, on the inside. That's all we need to do. So we're going to reach up in here, and we're going to start pulling it through. And that's why I said leave a hole as big as you think you need, because it's going to be okay. It's going to come right on out. Might just take a little push because we got that pocket on this one, so it's a little more bulk. But there we go. Just get that pushing through there. And there she is. Okay. Now we're going to turn that inside out like that. And there's our pocket right there. And we're going to need to push all the corners out, and we're going to top stitch along this edge. Sorry about that. My husband came through the door. Completed. So here we go. I'm thinking it's looking pretty good. So what we have here is a hole in our lining, right? Now you can hand stitch it if that's what you want to do. I don't want to. So all I'm going to do is grab this thing right here on both sides where I back stitched it, and I'm going to let it fold in on itself just like that. And I'm just going to run a little seam that close to the edge in my sewing machine all along there to seal that up. I'm going to take a couple stitches back. I'm just going to run along that edge there to what point? Right there. Now I'm going to trim this, and I am going to make sure that I got it all sealed up, and I do, so we can stuff that back in there. Okay, so the reason I told you to iron that really well earlier is because if not, now you would have to be trying to iron this in the round. But because you ironed it really well earlier, the only thing you got left to really iron is right. Now I got a neighbor out there shooting. Okay, trucks and gunshots. So I'm just going to take this to the iron, and I'm going to iron this down really, really good and flat right through this area here. And I'll be right back. I don't even know why they're shooting like that unless they got coyotes. Okay, guys, I recorded none of this. Right, sorry. I thought I turned the camera on and I didn't. All I did after I ironed it good and flat, I just started at the center line here underneath this, on this bottom edge, and I sewed a 1/4 inch away from the edge all the way around, ended back here, overran the line, cut it, and then repeated it on this side. That's all I did. And now it's got a nice finished flat edge. It'll keep your lining from wanting to come out. I pressed this edge really nice. Well, guys, that's it for this week. I hope y'all enjoyed it. I know it was a little long, but it was 3 projects to use up the scraps from the video from last week, which there'll be a link somewhere around here in just a second for y'all to watch that if you've missed it. This was just an idea of how to play with some of the scraps and how to make a pillowcase so you don't have to constantly buy pillows. Put that there. And then I love the little bags because I really think, you know, as a new crocheter, I'm not by no means what I'd call an avid crocheter, but I do knit a little bit, and You know, I just think this is a nice way to bring it in the car with me when I'm traveling, and I don't have to have stuff everywhere. Now, if you had a big project, you might need a bigger bag, and you can adjust this bag. You can make it longer, you can make it wider, you can make the pockets bigger. Just make sure your center stays the same, that width on your handle. And then you can add to the sides or add to the bottom. Just expand your numbers evenly on both sides or to all the way to the bottom. And you should be able to easily adjust the size of this bag. Also, if you want a bigger gusset, just cut a bigger gusset. It's not a big deal. Cut a 2-inch, cut a 2.5 inch, whatever you think you might need for the bottom of your bag. This here I am going to finish up this week, and I'll post this on Facebook so that y'all can see it all quilted out. And anyway, guys, I appreciate y'all joining me again this week. Remember to always be yourself. If you haven't yet, please like, subscribe, share, comment, any of those things. Visit my Facebook page and post your projects on there. A lot of y'all had some great ideas. The only way for me to see them is either post them on the Facebook page or send them to me to yourselfquilting@gmail.com, and then I could post them on the YouTube channel if I have a copy of your picture and your name and all your information that you want mentioned about it. I'll see y'all next week. Next week is the block of the month block. If you're new to the channel, we do a block of the month. I'll put a picture here where you can see what we're working on, and you can join in if you'd like to. You can get the patterns every month at my Etsy store. The link will be below next week when the block of the month's out. So guys, have a blessed week, and I will see y'all next Saturday. Bye.